Welcome to my series Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence. As a certified image professional and in my business style for life, I have the good fortune to work with some of Australia's most influential women who are committed to making a difference in the world and are also not afraid to showcase their strength and courage with a powerful visual brand. These women appreciate that an authentic image makes them even more credible, confident, and impressive than how they appear on paper. But as an ambitious woman, the journey to the C-suite can often be filled with insecurity, fear, judgment, and second guessing all around whether your executive presence and gravitas is going to be enough. It's also really the least understood, which is why I decided to actually start this series. Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence provides insights into how to develop and use executive presence as a powerful tool for career advancement through interviews with the most accomplished senior executive women in Australia. These women are highly respected leaders in their fields who concur that executive presence is a skill that should be learned and mastered to make a very real difference, and they share how to use it to achieve success both personally and professionally, and what executive presence has meant for them. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Athena Manley. Athena is a strategic and entrepreneurial executive with extensive experience leading multidisciplinary teams in the banking and insurance sectors. She is a multi-award-winning leader and has led divisions in the top 10 ASX, Fortune 500 and growth stage companies in Australia and internationally. Athena has built deep commercial and operational expertise, leading everything from strategy, business turnarounds, program remediation, transformation, and optimizing financial performance. Athena's purpose is to lead and inspire businesses that improve financial empowerment and mental health in society. She has recently launched 3 companies in this space: the Flexible CEO, Sanctuary Services, and her own strategy brand to promote and support leaders doing business differently to create a different world. She is a sought-after mentor and a proud mother of 2 sons. I'd like to welcome Athena to the show. Thank you, Athena, for joining me here today.
Thanks so much, Julie. An absolute pleasure.
I should also share that Athena actually has worked with me for some time, and not that that's going to provide any bias, but I'm really interested to go through and ask you, Athena, some of the questions that I've asked some other amazing women on this program and get your perspective on it. So can you tell me about the first time you realised the importance of executive presence in your career?
I absolutely love that question, Julie. Executive presence has always been a consideration for me throughout my career. And part of that is because I was such a young leader and had a lot of responsibility very early in my career. So I was quite a young bank manager at age 22. So I learned quickly that I needed to walk, talk, look and act like the leader of the branch and represent the brand of the organisation. And so when customers used to ask to speak to the manager, as they do in banking, there was sometimes a look of surprise as I was approaching the counter as a young woman. But people quickly warmed to me, and I really learnt through those roles to earn respect quickly. And part of that is certainly by developing executive presence. I think nowadays it's being part of every leadership role, and it's really about maximising your connection with your people, with your clients, with your shareholders, and instilling trust and building great working relationships. And into the future, I think executive presence will still remain important because relevance is key, and it can also be fun to get involved in as well. So I run a few different companies, and throughout each of those roles, each of the different companies has a different culture. So with that, to build connection, you want to be able to adjust and have some flexibility in your image and how you portray yourself with your stakeholders as well. Mm-hmm. So I won't wear a suit in Silicon Valley, but I certainly will in financial services.
Yes, it's all about being adaptable, isn't it? And blending in with the situation that you're in. You said something in that which was of interest to me, and you said that when you, at such a young age, when you were your bank manager, that you found people warmed to you very quickly. What do you think was behind all of that?
Well, I think there's certainly communication skills there, where when I communicate, it's all about what the other person needs. And so making sure that that's really reflected in the conversation. I think a second part to that is also having everything about how you approach the situation. That includes your body language, how you look, your gestures, those sorts of things, be congruent with your message, so that they're not seeing this disconnect into who they would expect to be really looking after their finances in that case, which is such an important part of everyone's lives. So they need to really have someone that can take control of that situation, they can feel confident in. So I learned a lot in that communication skills very early on.
Okay. I'm curious also to ask you, did you wear a uniform in that position?
Yes, and my younger brother used to come over and call me Bank Manager Barbie at that point, because I did have a suit. It had our logo on it, but of course you could still adjust how you wore that. You know, what are the accessories, how well you looked after it, which outfits within that uniform you chose, and we're very fortunate at that time to have great Australian designers be involved in creating that uniform, which helped have a quality product as well.
Yeah, I always find that when people put on a uniform, they step up into another space, and they assume the role that they are expected to be when they put on a uniform. It's like the military. When people put on a military uniform, they automatically step into another space. Did you find that yourself when you put on your uniform in the bank?
Yeah, looking back on it, I think so, because you are representing the organization, you're representing the brand. And so that ethos comes through. If you allow it to, you can allow it to really influence the way that you are holding yourself and interacting with people throughout the day, for sure.
Yeah, interesting. So, what are the strategies specifically that you use to amplify your own executive presence now? Because you've progressed so much in your career, and very quickly too, I might add, in the last 12 months. Everything that fell in, that you put out there to the universe just seemed to fall into your lap. So, can you talk a little bit about the strategies that you've been using?
Yes, well, in terms of executive presence, it really does support your leadership effectiveness. So I do have 3 strategies that I can share that I use to amplify my executive presence. And first one is the use of voice. So I've learned that the voice is an instrument, and you can learn to play it like any instrument. And many people know the techniques of how to use voice, but do you do them? And it's not just about, for women, oh, I'm going to drop my tone so that I sound a little bit like Margaret Thatcher or whomever you might think of with a deeper voice. But it is about using it to support your message. And I do practice that, and I use a voice warm up each day. And I've had the benefit of a brilliant coach to help me with that. Second part is around the body language, really supporting your messages. And there's so many symbols in how we move and even where we choose to sit. I had a great mentor of mine in my first C-suite role who came up and gave me a little bit of feedback around where I was sitting at the table in the boardroom. And I hadn't considered that. I hadn't wanted to go. I was the most senior person in the room, but I hadn't wanted to go and sit at the head of the table at that stage. And so that was sending a symbol in quite a traditional organization at that time of me not taking control of that meeting. So I did take on the feedback, and it's simple things like that that can make a difference. I would say that I'm still learning those. So I do try not to point, for example. But a photographer did snap me an event really recently where I was doing this. So good reminder to keep learning. And the third part is that I really have some techniques around is, of course, the physical image. So I do consider the details, and I do that a lot more now, having worked with you, Julie. I use that sort of physical image through social media, through speaking engagements, and in person, and through virtual meetings. So I think each of those contexts is really important. And I think in terms of the online meetings, this is one that can be underplayed because they are so heavily utilized now. And you can have a situation, many of us have faced this, where you're the person dialing in or one of a minority dialing in, and there's a lot of people in the room and you've got this hybrid scenario. So hybrid scenario can be even more challenging than pure online. So again, I had received some feedback that it was a little bit bland, my background and how I was coming across from just my surroundings. I had beige wall behind me, nothing really going on there. And somebody said to me, look, that doesn't really reflect who you are as a leader. And I already knew that the physical background was a great thing to be able to adjust. I also knew that speaking up in those online meetings could be really challenging. So again, I've taken that and adjusted that. So I would say if you are in an online meeting, some organizations still have a culture whereby people don't turn on their cameras. It's much more difficult to show your executive presence without your camera on. So I would recommend get the camera on. Do look to get your points across just as you would in a room. And that way you can have a lot more impact and those meetings will be a lot more meaningful.
Look, all fabulous points there. I love the fact that you've highlighted three very important ones: voice, body language, and also your physical presence, how you actually look. Because, when we consider the concept of, one's total image, then those are three important critical components of that. And if you don't get one right, it can absolutely undermine your credibility with everything, and it takes a lot to be able to restore that. So that's really great. And the virtual thing, and I remember when the pandemic hit us all and everyone was thrown into this scenario of having to present virtually. And you're right, some people had no idea of how to do it, what they wanted to have in their background, what was going to be representative of who they were, what their values were, the company they represented, or their personal brand if they worked for themselves. So there was a really big adjustment period for people to think about, well, I am front and center now and I can't escape this and I can't go and hide. And not putting your camera on, I think, it just makes people second guess who you are and raise.
And what else you might be doing. Are you really focused
I won't
on the
go
meeting?
there, but yeah, exactly. So, okay, just talking about that. In your opinion, what are the common misconceptions about executive presence that you've come across, and how do you feel individuals can overcome those moving forward?
I think the biggest one, and I have heard this from people of all kinds of different age groups and roles, but this biggest one is really that being natural or authentic means not growing or improving. That idea that somehow by improving your skills and the way that you come across and things like your executive presence or really any other skill, it means you're not being who you are. And I don't agree with that. And an elite athlete would never stop training. So why should any leader? Learning agility is really critical in business, and I think it always will be. So I think that's the biggest misconception, that idea that being authentic means having no improvement.
It's an interesting concept. I don't know if I've ever heard that one, but I hear what you're saying. It's almost like, well, I accept me the way I am and I don't have to have any growth. This is who I am. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And that can come through in terms of executive presence. If you've got, certainly if your image doesn't support the career journey that you want to take, I think that's where it comes through. And you've got a choice point there. Do you want to develop and really step into that and have your image and your personal brand support you in your career? Or do you want it to be something that you've constantly got to deal with? And there's always exceptions to every rule, but it is a consideration.
And it's about having everything in your toolbox aligned to that, isn't it? And working for you. All of the things that you can rely on and reach out for that are going to help you project that image and brand. Very interesting.
Absolutely.
So getting back to the pandemic, because we all experienced it. No one knew what was going to come of that, but it did have a profound impact on women, particularly in the workplace, because we were expected to fill so many different hats. So, but coming out of that now, where we are, yes, we've still got some of those hybrid situations, but a lot of women are now back in full on, face-to-face working scenarios and networking and business meetings and travel as well. So what's been the biggest shift you've experienced in how women present themselves now versus COVID? Are you seeing that there's a movement to go back to the way women used to dress, or that it's slightly adjusted now?
I do think it is slightly adjusted. I think there's more room to move, more room to be a little more casual, potentially wear less makeup if you wore makeup before, just toning things back in some cases, more natural tones in dress. Comfort is also something that I've been quite happy to see come through. And while I love a good pair of heels, to be frank, I do enjoy nice flats and getting around the city in flats. I can move a lot more quickly, and I do like to move quickly. So I think those things are some positive aspects. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned the word comfort, because I know that was a big word throughout COVID as well, that women needed to feel comfortable and be able to react, to different things that were going on. One minute they might be, attending to family, the next minute they had to attend a board meeting. And, how do we do that? How do we still look professional but be comfortable enough to be able to transition from one situation to another? But then coming back into the workplace, I know I have a lot of women asking me, how do I do flat shoes and not feel frumpy? And can I do that with a skirt or a dress? Or so there's a lot of confusion out there in terms of how do we do this new look. So it's just interesting watching what's going on in there.
Yeah, and certainly in some of the offices that I'm in, there is certainly a more casual tone for the majority.
Yeah.
And that has moved back a little bit, but not completely, I would say.
It'll be interesting to see where the tipping scales go in terms of whether we go fully back, because I think there are a lot of women out there who would really love to get back to that situation where, yes, you really dressed for work. It was an occasion and you did it because you were wanting to stand out, you were wanting to differentiate yourself, you were wanting to, really be noticed for all the right reasons. So just looking at your entire career, Athena, how do you feel the concept of executive presence has evolved over your career? Going back from when you were at the bank and you wore a uniform, going through all of those stages of your corporate career, and now having launched yourself out on your own with your own 3 businesses that you're running.
Yes, I think it has evolved throughout my career, and each level of role required a rethink. And I really would advise people to think about that before you shift. So what is that next level that you can go to? And how can you continually improve towards that in every facet of your professionalism? So if you're looking at, I think a lot of times we get quite fixated on technical skills, and technical skills are really important. Leading up, leading across, learning to deal with boards and governance issues, all kinds of things. There's constant learning going on. And think about those other aspects as well, and do think about where you're headed, and are you congruent? Is there some more help you could get? Have you got the right people around you who are going to support you to get there as well? So it has shifted over time, I would say, but it's always been there as a theme, from being that littlest kid in the class and the youngest in the class, wanting to excel at school, which was I was a geeky little kid, and right the way through to then I'm, the youngest branch manager, and then, you might be a younger executive or whatever case it may be. It does require that rethink at each level.
I love that. And I love the fact that you've as a child, you said you were the geekiest kid at school, because it's, you can develop into anything you want if you get the right advice and take action on things. I was extremely shy at school. In fact, I hated going to school. I couldn't make friends at all, and it was just small stepping stones to gain your confidence. And yes, having the right people around you who can support you and encourage you to move forward. So you've had, as I said at the start, you had an incredible journey over the last 12 months. So where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I love this. It's an classic interview question, isn't it? Where are you going to be in 5 years? So, but I do have a strong sense of where I want to be in 5 years. So answering that question wasn't too difficult. So for me, it's really about scaling my impact and fulfilling my purpose now, which is to lead and inspire businesses that improve financial well-being, that improve mental health in society, and do that at a much greater scale. So everything that I'm doing now, it's really working towards that in some way. And I've found ways that I can empower parts of the community through that. I can assist executives dealing with ageism through that. I can employ people with disabilities who are totally underutilized in our workforce through that. And it's a great learning journey, and meeting a lot more CEOs who are leading differently and who want to look at the future of work rather than looking at it as something that is, okay, what are we going to do with what's left over of work after the machines have done what they can do, really shaping a future that can be more positive than that, more impactful from that as we go through. So that's what I see myself doing today, but it's also what I see myself doing on a greater scale in 5 years' time.
We really are such a diverse world now, and you've mentioned people with disability, ageism. There are a couple of really big topics in this whole space of how do we work to be able to give other people who have been disadvantaged for whatever reason greater opportunities. And I know ageism is a big one. So many people are so worthy of senior positions. They're highly credentialed, but for whatever reason they fall by the wayside, and they feel like they're past their use by date, or that they're not good enough anymore. And there's a lot of competition out there. So how do you, what's your recommendation for people who are perhaps feeling that way, that the opportunities aren't presenting themselves because they are disadvantaged for whatever reason?
Yeah, look, it is a big challenge, and one that's so close to my heart, because I saw my father go through this quite a number of years ago. We had lost a house to a house fire, and we didn't have insurance, and so that meant that Dad really had to, a lot of the money from the family business went into trying to keep the family afloat. And in the end, you end up with cash flow issues. You end up, loss of your home, loss of the business, loss of all these things. And so Dad was showing up at the crack of dawn at work sites, anywhere, looking for work. And I saw this, fit, strong, amazing person get turned away. And I just broke my heart. So part of the Flexible CEO is really built on this idea that if you look at this talent shortage that's going on right now, so we see mid-tier, scale-up, brilliant organizations looking for a way to grow, and looking at the talent pool and going, well, can I find a CEO that's going to take this business forward at a price point that is sustainable for my business? I know I need the experience there, but can I really invest that at this stage? And on the other side of the equation, we have brilliant people, CEOs, senior executives, that in a fraction of the time could grow a business, turn around a business, get it to IPO, help a founder to exit, whatever that case may be, take that business to the next stage. They've got those skills and experience. So if we can bring together the two, that is a way to deal with some of these issues around ageism. So fractional CEOs, part-time, flexible type work, for people who have got, they've got perhaps philanthropic interests, maybe caring responsibilities for elderly parents, other things that they've got, maybe purpose-based activities that they're involved in. So they want to get involved on a fractional part-time basis and would love to make an impact with an organisation. And pairing those with those mid-tier organisations can be a way that I see that we can start to shift some of these mindsets and paradigms that a leader, someone in their 50s, in their 60s is not new thinking.
Yeah.
It's game-changing thinking with the right people who do have a learning agility, who do want to get in there and make a difference. So that's one of the businesses that I'm leading now.
That's amazing. I imagine you'll have hopefully get some government support on that one as well.
That would be great.
So what are you doing to ensure this is an area of strength for you and for those you are mentoring? Because I know you've just started your mentoring company, and you've had some amazing start to that already.
Yeah, so I do get asked to mentor leaders pretty frequently. Sometimes I'll go to an event and have more than one person on the same day. So through that, I've learned some themes around what people are looking for to really progress to the next stage of their careers. And so I'm bringing that together so that I can help more people rather than just the few or five mentees at the moment. And so I'm bringing that in a way that I'll be able to reach a lot more people, because it does, I always want to help people, but it gets a bit too time consuming at times. So I guess when it comes to the executive presence and how I help those I'm mentoring around that, it can be a delicate conversation to discuss a person's appearance. As you know, Julian, sometimes it's a taboo. People don't want to talk about it. I remember early in my career, we used to have leadership programs where we practiced giving people feedback on these sort of topics, because sometimes you needed to, and it was delicate, but it can be made easy with a few simple turns of phrase, I think. For example, it's talking about wardrobe for a role. It's not being critical of someone's choices. It's not being critical of them at all. And that importance of executive presence is undeniable. And image is just a critical facet of that, just another piece of that puzzle. So I speak to my mentees about all of those considerations because it's a vital part of their success.
It is. And look, I can remember years ago, because, I've been doing this for 20 years, going in and doing workshops within organisations that had large sales teams who were, front and centre representing the company and what the company was all about. And they wanted me to come in and talk to them about, appearance and the importance of presenting well, to represent the company's values and mission, etc. And it was more challenging in a mixed environment where you had both men and women, both genders, all genders, I should say, because one always wanted more than the other one. So then we'd have to do, one-on-ones afterwards to be able to pinpoint, well, where can you improve without making critical assessments, but you were making critical assessments to say, well, look, maybe you could take up the sleeve of your jacket, and maybe you could take up the hem of your jacket so that you look more in proportion. Maybe the length of your trousers could be raised just a little bit. Clean your shoes. All of the little things which, at a moment's notice can actually cause, a buyer to look at you and say, well, if you can't present yourself well, how am I supposed to think that the product that you're selling to me is going to be first class? So that's the power of, the appearance side of things. And I think it's a shame, it is a shame that some companies are reluctant to talk about it, because it's something which is within an individual's control. And as you know, with everything that we've done together, with the right help, you can manage this, and you can manage it very effectively, and it can it can do amazing things for you in terms of the people that are attracted to you, in terms of the conversations that you can have with people, and also the confidence it gives you to be able to go out there and do the work that you're doing. So
and I would definitely second that, and add also that when you're running companies, you're involved in large organizations or even small ones, you've got a lot of decisions to make, and you get very, very focused on your clients, on the outcomes and the impact that you want to have. Now, it can take a lot of time to think through all of those considerations around, brand and image and all these sorts of things on your own. And it's a real time saver, and potentially sanity saver, to have that help and be able to go, okay, this is what's happening this week. This is how I'm showing up, and I know it's going to work, rather than needing to take a lot of extra time and spin your wheels on, is this really working for me or not, or wasting money on things that don't suit, and all that kind of business.
yeah, look, I agree. You don't have an argument from there. And I think the biggest danger some women have is that they think that it's all they need to do is just go out and spend an amount of money on a new outfit. But unless you know exactly what works for you, what suits you, what color you should be buying it in, how to coordinate with other things, how to finish off, the final package, they can be wasting a lot of money, and they can be showing up wearing things that other women are wearing, which really doesn't differentiate you either, which is where I like to think my clients do have that point of difference when they step out. So Athena, I remember when, we started working together, you obviously had some really big ambitious goals, audacious goals, I should say. And a lot of those were around being able to present yourself to attract the right attention. So can you share with us a couple of examples as to how we workshopped those and what the outcomes were that you actually were able to achieve for yourself?
Yeah, I think this is could be quite interesting for a few people, because what a dress code says, if you haven't been to a type of event before, can be a challenge to navigate sometimes. So I've been going to a lot of events with other CEOs and other executives internationally that take you out of an office context, and that can be a real, for me anyway, it was quite a challenge to think through what was needed in those scenarios. And then, of course, I was fortunate to have your help, Julie, to navigate those. So one of those was around, I visited Necker Island as part of the CEO magazine leadership gathering earlier in the year. So that's Sir Richard Branson's private island in the Bahamas. And we've brought together some fantastic leaders there and speakers. And of course, Sir Richard himself spending those days with us. And so if you think about it, you're going, okay, well, I've got CEOs, I've got, I've got brilliant speakers, but I'm in an island location. So that's how do you bring together that dress code where you're kind of there professionally, but you're also in this really relaxed environment. And Richard is quite relaxed. It's his home, so you definitely don't want to overdo it, but you do want to come across well. So Julie and I worked together for that, and that certainly took a lot of confusion and a little bit of stress out of the process of packing for that trip. I then had New York. Now, New York was great. So New York, often very, very formal. So board meeting, absolutely full suit dress code. But then we had an event again with CEOs, senior leaders, and some political figures as well. The dress code was athleisure. And so what did you do with that? So, there was parts of the meeting that were quite formal, and then there was a high intensity workout at the end, believe it or not. And it was brilliant. But what did you wear for that? So Julie had to help me navigate that one as well. And so I've had a variety of these kind of events. Also, I'm a big fan of Formula One racing. That's my favorite sport. And I was fortunate enough early in the year to be in Melbourne for the opening of the Formula One at Government House. And so that was it's a formal-ish kind of event. And again, navigating that dress code and going, okay, well, how formal do we go? What's required here? And I wore a beautiful dress by a designer that we both admire, Lisa Barron, and that dress actually connected me with a whole bunch of people.